a lady told me that she was definitely ISIS. And I told her she couldn't have been, because at the time I knew 5 other women claiming to be ISIS also. Well, what they didn't realize, that going back into ISIS was like their great spiritual grandmother. And it wasn't that each one of them could trace their physical ancestry back, but it was their spiritual ancestry that they were connected with. And once she saw the difference between the two, then she was able to move on beyond that feeling that she was this really important person, but knowing that it was in her spiritual ancestry. And we find also in past lives that we can go back in there and find where people originated from in the beginning, and what part of the universe they came from. And very often we'll find that these people who come from various parts of the universe are coming back together, and they know many people who have been associated with them in that particular part of the universe. And one example is the constellation of Cassiopeia. And if you look up in the sky, you'll see in that area there's a very bright star cluster, and we find out that there are many people that are incarnating in the human existence who have had their awareness at that location in past times. And the people from Cassiopeia, they have certain traits about them that are very interesting. They are interested in the healing arts, and they're very compassionate people, and they're also interested in saving of the planet. And we find out that many people who are interested in things of a metaphysical nature are interested in saving the planet. And my thought to all these people that it's very important to be able to save the planet. Anything that we can do to possibly help the planet is going to be beneficial, because this is this home, and this is where we've been having this earthly experience, and we are able to move our consciousness into a different realm through our association with other people. And many people are coming together and are networking who have like minds at this particular time. And we find out that time is moving very rapidly. And Einstein said that before you break the light barrier, the resistance is always greater just before you break the light barrier. And thus it is when we're making this conscious shift into another dimension, the resistance is very great. So what we're experiencing now is the impaction of time, which appears as though it's being speeded up. So we're probably living 5 lifetimes in this one lifetime. And people who are coming from various backgrounds within the universe are seeming to be able to connect. And this is a very wonderful thing, to be able to connect with people who can relate to what you're doing and the work that you're doing and the work that you can do collectively. And we find that one of the mediums of being able to network is with the computer and with television programs and so forth like that. And these mediums can be utilized, and I find that the computer is very good because it's very quick, and you can communicate with somebody clear around the world in seconds. Thus it is the computer and the networks of computer, we find that you can apply this illustration to the planet itself. The planet itself has a grid of consciousness within the crust of the planet. And the grid of consciousness, everybody's connected to the grid of consciousness with a thread of intelligence. we find that the grid of consciousness connected with this planet has 7 different layers inside the Earth, and then layering up above the Earth. And the one that I'm principally interested in is the grid of consciousness that is within the crust of the planet Earth. And the grid of consciousness is actually comprised of etheric material. It is, you can't see it, touch, taste, feel. It's beyond our 5 senses. It is within the planet. And there is so much input into the grid of consciousness at this time that the grid of consciousness is expanding exponentially. And we find that parts of the grid of the consciousness within the crust of the Earth can be affected by outside influences. And sometimes there can be trash that is introduced into the grid of consciousness, and for lack of a better word, I just call it psychic sludge that's in there, and creating a blockage. So one of the things that Mother Divine has helped me with is to be able to remove the psychic sludge from the grid of consciousness. And also one of the things that Mother Divine has helped me with is the clearing of the grid of consciousness. Now, the only people who can interact with the grid of consciousness, of course, are the human beings. But very often you find some external beings who like to influence the grid of consciousness, but they have to do it with a human being. So very often there are places on the grid that need to be cleared off of this contamination from outside sources. Sometimes the grid needs to be cleaned of the psychic sludge, and sometimes the grid itself needs to be re-energized. Sometimes the grid itself needs to be reorganized. So with the help of Mother Divine and other beings from different dimensional frequencies, we've been able to do a lot of work with the grid to be able to keep it moving clearly and cleanly. And one example was in Arizona. They asked me to do a cleaning on the grid because this grid was in an area that was close to a nuclear power plant. And on the surface, for several miles around this nuclear power plant, all the plants were dying. And the animals, there were no animals in there. This area was becoming sterile. So what I had to do is actually go clear around this area that we're talking about. And what I did was go in a big, large triangle, not a triangle, but a rectangle, all the way around us, doing this cleaning work and clearing work and removing all the psychic sludge in this energy and re-energizing this area. A year later, I came back and went over through the area, and I was able to see that many of the plants had come back to life. The whole area was rejuvenating. So there are things that we can do to help Mother Nature, and we can remove the things that are suppressing the wildlife. And I noticed that there are places on the planet where out in the ocean where you have dead zones, and we can rejuvenate these dead zones and work with them to get life back into these places over here, because we find that it's so important that everything within nature is vibrant and working. Nature has this wonderful ability to balance itself. And this is one of the things that we can do, is help nature in balancing itself. And we find out that many of the beings from other densities are interested in the planet and are well able to help us. But we do have to give them permission. They just can't arbitrarily go in and start cleaning up stuff. They